the process of how you got started going into videography of UFOs.
I'm someone with a long-standing interest in the subject. I read across the board when I was a young reader in the early 70s any books available in the public library about this and related subjects fascinated me. In the 1970s, I grew up in a time when there was widespread public interest in questions related to ancient astronauts, Bermuda Triangle, and other types of phenomena. And I was captivated by it. My imagination was highly entertained by ideas that average everyday people could have contact with cosmic types of phenomena. Now, I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is a location with a long-standing reputation for UFO sightings and contact. One of the famous filmmakers from the city is a woman named Dorothy Izett, and she reportedly recorded 30,000 feet of 8mm film, mostly from her back deck out in the Vancouver area of her home through the 1970s and 1980s. And her footage was widely featured on U.S. television during that time. She went on to write a book in the last decade, and I believe there's a documentary or more than one documentary covering her work. She had quite a lot of fascinating images, and when I saw her give a talk at the planetarium in Vancouver one year at the book launch, I asked her a question about methods and procedures, and she framed it very simply. She said, look up and just engage with the process, and you were as likely to have an experience as I. She made it seem very simple for anybody who was curious to actively engage themselves. And so I took inspiration again from the people around me, from readings, films, television of the day, but I also had my own experiences. When I was a teenager in Vancouver, I was very active in music, and one of my neighbors and I went down to one of the local beaches during, I think it was during the summer holidays, and I was about 16 years old. And we took our musical instruments with us, and we were playing down at the beach for a couple of hours around dusk. And we saw above us, probably a little bit higher than the tree level, was this anomalous light that was traveling. It was traveling over English Bay, which is a place where there are a lot of reports of UFOs. It was traveling over English Bay, and it was moving in an erratic fashion that wasn't unlike the way that a bird might move, something organic, something living. It was flitting, so to speak, in an oscillating path that would eventually lead it over English Bay towards the west end, towards downtown and Stanley Park. So we had about a 15-minute period of observation, and we were just stunned that this luminous entity had manifested during our jam session, and it really blew our minds. We suddenly felt that we were party to what everyone had been talking about for so long. We were now witnesses to this phenomena of these luminous orb UFOs. As I recall, the color of the light it emitted was white. It was entirely luminous. If it was a bird that had today, if it was a bird with an LED attached to its leg or something like that, that might, resemble its behavior and how bright it was to us. But again, I was able to share a contact witness sighting experience with a friend as a teenager, and I felt that I had broken the threshold from books, television, and movies about the subject into personal experience in a very direct way. I subsequently went on into a variety of studies, consciousness studies, meditation, professional life, and so on. And moving the clock up towards the end of the last millennium, I made contact with James Gilliland at ESETI, who had heard of my speech studies and was interested in me making a connection with his ranch and the people there and the different festivities and events that he hosts on his private property throughout the summer months. And so I became a visitor to James Gilliland's ranch, and all the great aura of mystery that surrounds that location and all the different phenomena that have occurred over the years. James had taped, at that time, James had already taped a number of the lights that were appearing over his ranch, but the development of those libraries and the methodologies would grow over the years that I became a visitor, and eventually would move into night vision, and we would have a lot more sophisticated equipment on site. At that time, he had a camcorder, and he had some substantial materials, and he was making the rounds in television and radio, talking about UFO contact and his experiences. At the ranch, I didn't initially have any major sightings of UFOs. That didn't characterize my experience. It was much more the mysteries of the location and some of the really interesting coincidences that were happening just with natural phenomena. Like I would be with another person there and witness clouds that would pass over in the sky in the perfectly defined shape of I Ching hexagrams, like two trigrams side by side, perfectly oriented and geometrical. It was like nature was talking to the people there. It was really enchanting. So these kinds of, as I said, sort of coincidence, mystery phenomena accompanied my visits to that place. But it wasn't until 2009 that I returned there again after 7 years, and then we started to see major luminous phenomena. I became one of the witnesses to the very overt displays that was happening there. And at the same time, I had acquired a broadcast camera. I had, over the years between visits, I had considered how to upgrade the documentation that was taking place in locations like there and in Vancouver as well. What tools or techniques could be used to push the game up to the next level in terms of acquiring documentation on a personal budget. So I picked up a zero-lux camera, broadcast camera, the same camera that's used on the television series Ghost Hunters for all the black and white infrared shooting. And I took that camera with me to the ranch. And so starting in 2009, I started shooting the footage with that camera at the ranch, and started to develop my library of footage from that location. Again, I was inspired by what I had seen, by the different kinds of photography that were there, by James's footage, by the footage of other famous footage I'd seen over the years. I was inspired, and I hoped to participate. And my time as a guest there served as an opportunity for me to get on the front lines and get in the game with a camera in hand and start to develop documentation in my own library from that location and many other locations. By 2011, I had started to include night vision equipment in my kit. So I was shooting through a piece of equipment called a Pulsar Recon in their X series of digital night vision scopes. It's a very high sensitivity. It's equivalent to a portable observatory with 5 times telephoto and at 1/10,000th of a lux sensitivity. So really something that can go right beside a Gen 3 mil-spec scope in terms of sensitivity and light acquisition, and very easy to record from. So I acquired a library using both those pieces of equipment, and I worked side by side with James over a number of seasons to get multi-camera shoots, including all-sky camera setups matched with Gen 3 and telephoto digital night vision, triple camera recordings of very, very dramatic events that happened there. James Gilden's ranch wasn't the only location where I was able to tape these types of phenomena. I have footage from Dallas, Texas, daylight UFO over the Addison airport. I have footage from the Stephenville area of Granbury, Texas, Marfa Lights. I was in Roswell, although with no real results to show for it, but I was in Artesia. We had a dramatic sighting there, and I made contact with local videographers there, Artesia, New Mexico, just south of Roswell. In British Columbia, I've taped incidents in Vancouver, daylight and night, as well as in the Okanagan. Some marvelous skies up in British Columbia's Okanagan for night viewing, and I've had opportunities through private property up there that's off-grid to go and record in what we call the UFO Canyon. So these different opportunities, different locations, I've had time out looking at the night sky, using this equipment, studying the different types of objects that can be visible, and learning to identify some of the more visible satellites, the meteors and other kinds of natural phenomena that will come up along with the anomalies. In other words, by investing the time and carefully gauging my results against available published tracking tables for satellites and other known space objects, I was able to establish some rudimental baselines against which I was able to evaluate and differentiate what I was observing from the known objects. But to amplify that differentiation, I actively participated in a practice which involved shining lights from the ground up towards the objects in the sky and taping the results. And what we would witness time and time again is apparent bidirectional communications in terms of signaling back and forth from objects in the sky back to the observers on the ground. And these most dramatic of videos that were recorded during those incidents serve as evidence for what observers describe as close encounters of the fifth kind, or bidirectional communications with the craft and their occupants. That is probably the most dramatic kind of footage, and because we were able to repeat this, and because there appears to be a sequential relationship between the lights flashing from the ground and the lights flashing from the sky, we find it quite compelling and convincing that we are actually engaged in those types of communications. Now, so far I've talked about physical types of evidence using camera equipment, as well as multi-witness events. But further to my studies, I've also investigated reports of the accompanying psychic phenomena that experiencers engage in which they have telepathic contact, clairvoyant type of contact, predictive contact, lucid dreams, out-of-body travel, all kinds of psychic dimensions to contact, which are in some ways lesser known, although people who've claimed contact with extraterrestrials, at least as early as the 1950s, have all talked about the psychic dimensions of contact. In other words, people who were able to present visual evidence through photography or film of UFO incidents also made very strong claims about the psychic nature of the ETs. So this has not diminished. This trend in the reporting of the witnesses has continued into the present day, and it in my estimation, it may well represent the majority of contact incidents. In other words, nuts and bolts contact with spaceships may be incredibly resource-consuming in order to manifest on some sort of on-demand basis. If we imagine on a human scale, the cost of operations, support, training, housing, medical, food, insurance, supplies, spare parts, repairs, all of the infrastructure and operations requirements that are involved in the operations and maintenance of a large seagoing vessel, an aircraft, a spacecraft, even ground transportation. There's associated costs that are substantial, and so the cost in human terms of mounting a space fleet and flying them around from place to place to be seen by people would seem inordinately costly. Therefore, it appears, in my imagination, it appears that because nature does not condone doesn't waste anything. Nothing is wasted in nature is the axiom. That psychic types of contact would be far more economic and efficient once a physical contact had been established as a sort of a validation or a reinforcement or amplification of that relationship. That psychic contacts would pervade beyond physical events, and so people again have pre-contact dreams, post-contact dreams, where they're witnessing the UFOs from a visionary perspective rather than being there physically, and the character of those events is profound, particularly when it's combined with situations where we're dealing with individuals who have substantial instrumental documentation to accompany their testimonies. Not just a bunch of dreamers, so to speak, but rather people whose portfolios and catalogs of physical evidence are deepened and enriched by testimony regarding personal psychic dimensions of contact. I think this is one of the most fascinating areas in this type of research, and it's the one that compels me further. For me, the nature of contact is less. I'm less concerned with acquiring nuts and bolts components from crash flying saucers or dead bodies for autopsies and vivisections. That really is not the appeal. I'm not looking for corpses. I'm not looking for widgets. I'm not running a lab where I'm trying to build my own UFO. None of those directions in research are of interest to me. It's the consciousness direction that holds my fascination, in that the archetype of the UFO incident, of the flying saucer incident, is evocative of ancient concepts of human cosmic contact that are described extensively in traditions that include South Asian yoga. People talk about something called the Sudarshan chakra, in which Narayan, the incarnation of Vishnu, is dancing. In other words, the being within the saucer is a cosmic entity, according to that conception. And from a 21st century point of view, psychologically, I can draw parallels between notions of cosmic extraterrestrials and flying saucers being witnessed today, and the invocation of the ancient archetype of Narayan or Shiva in the Nataraja stance, dancing away in the cosmic circle. The Sudarshan chakra is the archetypal flying saucer in my estimation. So the consciousness studies dimension of contact and the witness experience, the contact as a springboard towards higher consciousness, exhibitions of higher consciousness behavior, higher consciousness related behaviors, displays of telepathy, clairvoyance, lucid perception of various kinds, visionary perception, lucid dreaming, precognitive dreaming, these kinds of higher consciousness demonstrations. I see this as the future outcome, the most beneficial outcome, and the most attainable for folks, particularly folks who don't hold PhDs in physics, in quantum engineering, or rocket science. The majority of the population can enjoy higher consciousness stimulation through engaging in these phenomena that are apparently widely accessible. That the bar of entry does not require one to hold a PhD or other or status in government or other kinds of position. Although those folks are not excluded from experiencing different kinds of contact. These types of contact with cosmic phenomena are within the grasp of the average person, and this is a notion that, again, that goes back to ancient concepts in yoga, that if you have a human body, you qualify for all kinds of amazing experiences if you only want to participate. The universe is ready to receive us in our inquiry and our sense of adventure, our spirit of adventure, if we are ready to step forward and engage. The UFO phenomenon is like that for me. There are many other dimensions to these phenomena that I'm aware of and sensitive to. There are many concerns about hostile contacts and abductions, torture, and so on. I'm able to reflect that our own society is actively engaged in identical practices, and that if folks are concerned in principle or against those kinds of behaviors in principle, that we would be active within our own society to prevent us participating in those kinds of behaviors before we would condemn any other society. So people want to make a lot of noise about how dangerous UFOs and extraterrestrials may be, but I say we don't have to look far for danger in our own society. Furthermore, contact incidents that are facilitated by visits to remote wilderness are accompanied by all kinds of common sense dangers. In British Columbia, we have a rugged backcountry that's not far from civilization, populated by bears, mountain lions, all kinds of difficult terrain. People die in British Columbia from avalanches on ski trips every winter. Mountain climbing expeditions and other kinds of ventures in Cascadia, people climbing mountains die every winter. So those dangers exist. But a person who has a sense of adventure, is spirited, wants to explore their potential for upping the game of life and participating on a higher level. Venturing into UFO contact and its extraterrestrial implications, other dimensional implications, is an amazing opportunity of our times. And so I've been an active participant, and as you said, I have a catalog on YouTube full of videos of it.
We are talking to John Kelly from yourinnervoice.com. I am Dave Turnachan, your host of Spaced Out Radio. And John, one of the things that I have noticed, because I've been lucky enough and one of the fortunate ones to see a couple of UFOs. And one of the things that I have noticed is it seems to me that the time of year for myself, most of my sightings have usually happened in the spring to summertime. Now, I'm someone who likes to go outside even if it's winter. The cold doesn't bother me. But do you find that different dates or different times of the year amplify sightings?
Well, this is a very reasonable question. One reason what we can consider that is fundamental has to do with warmer temperatures. And you have already stated how there's no difference in frequency for you, winter or summer, but it would seem that more people will be outside on warmer nights that will occur in spring, summer, autumn. And so those times, in other words, the more eyes on the sky, the more likelihood of something being witnessed. My catalog covers. I think I have 4 seasons of taping. There's no restriction in terms of seasons from when I've had some really solid events that I've caught on tape. January, April, August, or November. There haven't been those kinds of limits. I haven't really marked the calendar and looked for patterns date-wise or month-wise. Although my archives are time and date stamped. I haven't sought those types of patterns. I've concluded in a very simplistic way that due to warmer night conditions, more people are outside and available to see something, spring, summer, or fall, and that therefore may be a time when we have more sightings. But your question is something I haven't pursued further. I don't really know if there are special dates when more contact events may happen. I have no idea.
We are speaking with John Kelly from YourInnerVoice.com. He is one of the premier UFO videographers. He has over 1.3 million hits on YouTube of people watching his video footage. Now, do you find when you are out going to do a session where you are filming UFOs, do you find that it's daytime or nighttime that you are seeing a little bit more?
Well, I have cultivated both aspects. I've worked very closely with a local videographer named Les Mirza, and his catalog has been primarily daylight. We found that when we would work together, that approaching around the 5 p.m. hour in the afternoon was consistently a time when something would happen in terms of daylight events and daylight sightings. So that was something that we had noted. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the Mount Pleasant UFO corridor near City Hall, something would happen on a consistent enough basis that we could be set up with our gear around that time and get decent captures. Your question is the answer is relative, specifically because when people operate infrared equipment at night, the visual acuity, the threshold is magnified or amplified tremendously, like exponentially. Through night vision at night, we can see so many more objects, like substantially more objects, even under city light pollution conditions. Therefore, there's a greater chance of seeing more events. I would have to say my library has many more night vision objects in it than it does daylight objects. But I've been successful in acquiring both, and I have, as I said, I know at least one videographer that I've worked with who was consistently getting daylight footage.
We have a couple more minutes before we go to break. At the bottom of the hour, we are with John Kelly from YourInnerVoice.com. I am Dave Scott, your host of Spaced Out Radio. Now, John, I want to get into the specifics of the gear that you use in the next half an hour, but when we're doing that, or before we do that, pardon me, how does the normal person who, say, doesn't have the proper equipment videotape this? Because a cell phone quality obviously is not going to work for somebody who's using a smartphone.
Well, what we will find is that within the population, the cell phone camera will be the dominant form of instrumentation that most people will have access to. And we will see most of the documentation coming from the public will be in that form, will be cell phone videos, some of which are not bad. But for better imaging, telephoto optics and night vision infrared optics enhance the experience in terms of what we can share and what we can resolve from those videos. I have acted as a consultant offering digital night vision equipment to clients across the world, and I've been supporting people in this area for several years. And I've targeted affordable, easy-to-use gear from various manufacturers, including Pulsar, like the equipment that I'm running myself. I also have the DVC-30 that I use is something that's widely available on the used market. It's no longer available as a brand new piece of equipment, and those are certainly things that people can acquire. Of course, there's some learning curve into using something like that, and also there's the desire. People, camera operations can be complicated. There's some learning curve. There's some commitment to lugging gear. And people have to differentiate themselves from the crowd. They have to want to sort of take things to the next level. There are websites like UFONV.com, which host forums with users from all over the world who are assembling their own rigs, and even inexpensive rigs with their own designs for acquiring images in their local areas. Lots of information on sites like that. If people have do-it-yourself capabilities, some engineering and electrical skills, programming skills, they can assemble some very interesting custom optical rigs using available components that are on the open market. But I target consumer-friendly gear that doesn't require, no assembly required, just simply getting used to operating and getting in the habit of taking your kit with you, and getting oriented, which has several layers of meaning, but orienting towards getting the shots and starting to accumulate the shots and logging and paying attention to what else is in the sky. These kinds of things. It's doable. There's not the majority doesn't necessarily want to take those extra steps, but there are profound results aesthetically, personally, and scientifically and educationally. There are profound possible results for people using the equipment that's available today. There's so much trickle down, in other words, of high-tech hardware into the consumer realm that we no longer need to be space scientists to access zero lux and better cameras, for example. So this is an era that's opportune. We live in a time that's opportune. There's lots of sighting potential around us, and there's lots of high-tech gear that is within reasonable price that people can acquire and start using. This is the time to do it.
As you mentioned earlier, you videotaped pretty much everywhere important. You caught my attention with something that you said, though. Please explain to people who are listening, where is the UFO Canyon and how did it get its name?
The UFO Canyon is in the Okanagan region of British Columbia, which is a wonderful vacation area for tourists in summertime. Lake Okanagan offers all kinds of water sport opportunities, as well as its own mysterious lake monster, who's sighted over decades, if not centuries, Ogopogo. So this Okanagan region is host to vineyards, orchards, and wonderful near-desert conditions. The Osoyoos, a small community just off the U.S. border, is Canada's only desert location, as a matter of fact. And so when people talk about high desert conditions in New Mexico and throughout the United States, that same band of desert, that same geological strata extends all the way up into Osoyoos. We have high desert conditions there as well. Now, where I go is off grid at a private, undisclosed location, and it is a canyon location, and there are many canyons and coulees in Cascadia related to ancient volcanic activity. So I am not in a position to disclose an actual address for the canyon. But it is an idea that we've propagated through a number of my videos. I hope to finish a documentary about my trips there. It's been a great retreat location, a place of great tranquility, and a lot of contacts. I think what's important about the canyon is the frequency of mysterious incidents that we've seen there and taped. not only UFOs in the sky, but light phenomena on the canyon walls at night that we've recorded, as well as the psychic dimensions of that location. There's a lot of psychic phenomena that accompanies visits to that area. If we don't have visual sightings, we may have intense sensations of contact in other dimensional levels through dream time. And so there are shamanic and journeying qualities to that location that we experience as well. In a sense, this idea that the Earth has these vortices and hotspots, and it's become like pilgrimage points for individuals, is compelling to many. But in the ultimate sense, the pilgrimage and the journey is within each one of us, and any location can become active under the right circumstances. And so I think beyond the specialties of a certain location, just like the fine orchards and the wines and the peaches and other kinds of agricultural produce that come from the Okanagan that are specialties of the region, the psychic phenomena and the extraterrestrial and UFO phenomena are also local specialties. But we can take something with us and seek within our own environment what is possible. And I think that's one of the deeper lessons of these events. UFO Canyon serves as a showcase or a showpiece of contact with different phenomena for a variety of very good reasons. The footage from that location is kind of stunning, to say the least, not only because the dark skies are razor sharp. I mean, night sky viewing conditions there are just superb due to absence of light pollution because of the canyon setting. But furthermore, the contacts are vivid and extraordinary in many ways. The examples that come from there related to these communication type sightings that I was describing are profound and very dramatic. And is made in Canada, is local, regional, Pacific Northwest, Cascadian, Southwestern British Columbia phenomena. So there's that to like about it. But it serves as a model of how people can apply themselves in their own region, even under seeming less than ideal conditions. We're talking off-grid location. We're talking intense wilderness conditions where wildlife is frequently coming onto the property, including families of bear, deer, eagle, moose, rattlesnake. In the summer season, that high desert has populations of rattlesnake. I haven't seen any scorpions up there, but rattlesnake is something that's frequent. So even with all those kinds of extra critters in the area, these things are possible. These kinds of high adventure experiences, encounters are possible. And so my real hope is not to get millions of visitors to the Okanagan as tourists, or billions. I mean, we can't fit the world's population in the UFO Canyon. It may be large, but it's not that big. So really what has to happen is people have to cultivate their local opportunities and find out what's special about where they are, and learn to look at their settings in a new way. I think that this approach is characteristic in part of what happened to me as a Vancouver native, born and raised in Vancouver. I learned to rediscover this location through access to these extraordinary phenomena. It made me reconsider the entire nature of my setting. I had driven from one end of the city to the other. I knew most of the neighborhoods like the back of my hand by the time I was in my 20s. But through access to extraordinary phenomena, my perceptions of where I was and its potential changed dramatically, and it reinvigorated and inspired my experience of living here. My experience of where I am has been enriched by transcending a sense of physical place and location, and sense of limits, physical limits and boundaries that are practical limits and boundaries on our physical reach. I live a better lifestyle, and I have a better experience of this location due to the way my life has taken me to places that have transcended the physical and being stuck on any sense of being in any one location.
John Kelly from YourInnerVoice.com. He is a UFO videographer from British Columbia, Canada, straight down to Roswell, New Mexico. He's got footage. John, when you talk about the UFO canyon, and it's kind of amazing, we want to keep that private because of, everybody has their own secret spot that they like to relax or film UFOs. But my question leading into this is, at any point, have you filmed a landing or beings either coming to a ship or coming out of a ship?
Yeah, this is an interesting question. What characterizes my experience of phenomena happening at ground level is luminous phenomena at ground level. I have high definition photography, for example, of luminous phenomena appearing right in front of camera lenses, and as well as triple sensor camera footage. As I described at the canyon, we have lights appearing on the canyon walls, not just in the sky. But in terms of encounters with occupants who are manifesting characteristics like what we've learned, from various media, that experience is not really colored. That's not been part of what's happened in my experience. I have no reports of Nordic beings, reptilian beings, or gray-like entities. None of that has really characterized what's happened in my experience. It's interesting because there's so much testimony about those kinds of events. And even, there's some very controversial footage and photography that accompanies those reports. My contact with these phenomena, again, has directed me more towards the consciousness studies arena, more so than it has into specific phenotypes, genotype, species typing of the variety of potential extraterrestrials. I remain open to the idea that our universe or multiverse is populated with all kinds of entities, but my journey doesn't appear to be related to identifying and cataloging various types of physical entities, with the notion in mind that at a consciousness level, we're all existing in a kind of a unified state, that there's no differentiation in terms of species, phenotype, genotype. It doesn't. That's relative more to a physical presence. So again, I do not have a catalog of entities coming on and off a spacecraft. I'm open to the possibility that I may one day be in a situation where that happens and I have cameras rolling, but it's not characterized my experience. I have lights at ground level and even high definition of images of profound luminous phenomena at ground level, but nothing related to the much discussed reports of entities like in the interrupted journey of Betty and Barney Hill, where physical extraterrestrials are getting on and off the spaceship, like in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That's not been my experience.
John Kelly from YourInnerVoice.com. He is a UFO videographer. John, many skeptics out there will say that your footage is maybe meteors, space junk flying around that maybe has sun shining off of it, or satellites that are moving at different speeds, because we don't know what governments have up in the sky or what kind of technology they're actually hiding up there. How do you define the difference between a satellite, meteorite, space junk to a UFO?
Well, so we're working with a bullet list of items, and I think these are all valid questions. So start with the meteors. Meteor phenomena are exceptionally common. There are times of years where there are published showers that are widely visible to people across different vast swaths of regions, North America, and in Vancouver we can participate in those at different times of years as well. However, at any time under night vision conditions, meteors can be seen that are not visible to the naked eye. And so, as a videographer using night vision equipment, I've accumulated a substantial catalog of meteor incidents. I have baseline measurements as to how my equipment detects and renders those phenomena. and I am able to differentiate between those renderings and what the other objects look like. So that is something that is easy to address. Again, specifically with the intervention of a technological intervention using infrared night vision, something that may only be visible at certain times a year, during a meteor shower, is commonplace throughout the year under night vision conditions. So I have lots of meteor footage. Meteors enter the atmosphere at something like 18 or 19,000 miles per hour, and the visible period is commonly very, very, very short. In terms of camera footage recording at 30 frames per second, they might only appear in 2 to 3 consecutive frames at the most, considering the rate of travel. There are color displays using 3 CCD camera sensors. We can just see the green colors, that come, I believe green is iron being burned up in the atmosphere. It emits green color. So again, that's not difficult to evaluate, and I have lots of recordings of meteors. Okay, next object, space junk and other known objects. There are easily accessible published timetables. There are even apps for smartphones that access the available databases of known objects, and there is no difficulty, particularly in an online era when we can go online, consult the tables, or for owners of smartphones, we can just mount those apps and start using them in real time and draw from databases of tens of thousands of known objects that are cataloged and cross-reference. And I've been in many, many, many recording situations, particularly at the ranch when there's several hundred people at a time all participating. We'll have active tracking table users on the field with us, cross-referencing available resources against the actual events. And those tracking attempts are confounded again and again. It's predictable that we will encounter something that will not fit into the known objects as recorded in the available tables. So learning to identify the ISS, which is a frequent visitor here in the Northern Hemisphere, becomes important, because after you've seen it a few times, it's not really worth rolling tape on the same objects. Are very bright, luminous, has a blue corona and a white body, and it's flying at a high rate of speed. We see it often. It doesn't really do anything profound in its travel. It's exceptionally bright, but it doesn't exhibit light displays that are like oscillating in their amplitude or anything like that. It doesn't do anything dramatic other than appearing as a bright object. There are other objects that don't look like that, that are exceptionally bright and that are inexplicable. So we've now covered in our list of questions, we've covered meteors or shooting stars, we've covered space debris, which is in the tracking tables, like rocket body parts from launches, from the 1950s and stuff like that. Those are all known, and the tracking tables identify them, as well as the satellites and what other kinds of published information is available. And then the third type of object that you've mentioned is the mysterious unknown object, the black project object, in which there's a disconnect between the public and their governments, and the governments are doing things with public money that the public has no idea about, and there's no recourse to determining what that may be unless you're an insider involved in a black project. And my response to that is that under conditions of secrecy, under protocols of secrecy, there would never be conditions in which participants in those programs would willfully breach the investment in secrecy and security of whatever that research object may be. In other words, I do not foresee a time when staff working at some kind of secret base go up to their supervisor and say, "Hey, can we take that research flying saucer out for a spin on Saturday night? We promise to have it back by Monday morning." I just don't anticipate that there would ever be a security protocol that would accommodate that, or that joyriders in flying saucers taken from government bases would be engaging in bidirectional communications with members of the public, particularly at locations that have reputations for hosting camera teams from broadcast venues like Fox Television or History Channel or these other major broadcasters who are constantly sending teams up to the James Gill Ranch. It really defies my sense of what security protocols would exist that could accommodate both shoot on site type of orders that are in place and that are published at sites like Area 51. The signage indicates that the staff is authorized to shoot trespassers upon detection. You have shoot on site orders and joyriding, highly visible security breaching, protocol breaching appearances, and we call this black or top secret project. No, it's illogical. That's an irrational argument. There are no circumstances, I argue, there are no circumstances under which there could be any protocol that could accommodate both shoot on site security and joyriding, security breaching displays. Those two things don't exist in the real world. It's incompatible. So while I acknowledge that there is a black world, my research doesn't necessarily attempt to breach past the security perimeters, because going back to my earlier discussion points, I believe, and I've developed evidence in support of this idea that the average person can reach the stars of their own volition and capacity. We have inborn capabilities that don't require us to become high priests of black sciences, secret project insiders, and become the gatekeepers of the specialized knowledge. It's really not required. I find that a nonsensical approach to this question. The average person, a child with a cell phone camera, can produce profound photography of transcendent phenomena that a scientist in a lab may spend at least one generation attempting to produce, may or may not succeed. So, well, again, I acknowledge that we live in a society where these divisions exist between elite controlled information under the auspices of black projects and the general public. It is not necessary. I say further that the glamorization of these black sites and individuals attempting to trespass and get arrested for trespassing at places like Area 51. We see news every year about some reality show that accidentally trespassed at Area 51 and had guns pointed at them. Big surprise, it's like that's news. I find that completely misleading. That engagement with criminal breaches of trespass and other kinds of behaviors are not a necessary component to participate in meaningful types of contact. It can be done at locations far, far removed from any kind of facilities. We don't need to. We do not need to, get involved in complicated laws and government policy issues to enjoy contact. It's our birthright. So that's the perspective I bring. So I honor and acknowledge that those things may or may not exist, but I'm not party to any of that, and I have no real. I could, personally, I really have no desire. I have no sense that there's anything in there for me. I'm manifesting my own experiences and my own abilities, and with my friends' help, in lawful and peaceful and harmless ways. What do I need that for? So I hope I've addressed those important bullet points that you've raised, that meteors, satellites, space junk, and black project objects, we can accommodate that and we can differentiate from them. And I said earlier that the bidirectional communications is a key differentiator, that through light signaling that can be documented and seen by multi-witnesses and recorded with instruments, sequential bidirectional communications seem to offer, at a minimum, a sense that there are intelligent entities who are willing to engage us in if in only the most minimalist fashion. There is a sense that we are making a connection. Now, skeptics may think that I am entirely incompetent and incapable of making these kinds of visual identifications. I may be somebody who can't tell the difference between red traffic light and a green traffic light. I mean, in a hypothetical parallel universe, that may be the case. I may not be qualified to make these kinds of visual differentiations and identifications. I'm not a jet fighter pilot or an astronaut or an astronomer. I don't have any of those qualifications. I'm just an interested party who's got a little bit of initiative, has made a few investments and a few sacrifices to be a participant, and has something to show for their commitment. As like most people, I look both ways before I cross the street, and I've been doing that for most of my life, and apparently I've been doing it successfully because I'm still here. So I possess a minimum qualification of visual competency in order to make life and death decisions about things like crossing the street. I can apply that same competency to other arenas like observation, use of optical equipment. I have the minimum qualifications to participate at that level as well.
We're talking with John Kelly here on Spaced Out Radio. We got about 3 minutes before the break. In our chat room that we have going every night at www.spacedoutradio.com, one of our guests in here, John, has a question for you, and they are wondering, in the UFO Canyon, have you ever seen any evidence of crop circles or any evidence that they have left a mark on the ground or in the area?
No, there is no. I'm cross-referencing any testimony or things we've seen, and there's no this sort of trace signature evidence. The only trace signatures are the impressions on the camera sensors. Those are physical impressions, but there were no crop circles that I'm aware of, or other indications of landing. Footprints, impressions on the ground, broken foliage, or strange marks in the ground where plant life doesn't grow. I'm familiar with these kinds of trace phenomena. They are part of the Close Encounters cataloging. I can't remember which number they fall under, but they are. This is a well-known avenue of exploration in ufology. People have been looking for trace signatures for a long time. But it could be said, at a minimum, philosophically, again, that an impression on a camera sensor is a physical trace. So I certainly have lots of those, but nothing to show in terms of what the questioner has asked.
Could you maybe explain the surroundings of the ECETI Ranch, what it's like there for those of us who have not been there before?
ECETI Ranch is situated in the Columbia River Basin. The Columbia River, one of the largest waterways in North America, begins in the British Columbia Rockies and extends south. The characteristics of the landscape in the area is a lush, forested area with fruit orchards, creeks and streams, a lot of glacial water systems extending off of Mount Adams, one of the large Cascade volcanoes, of which we have several here in southwestern British Columbia as well. And that Cascade system, including Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, Mount Adams, Mount Jefferson, the Three Sisters, Mount Shasta in California, all this chain of stratovolcanoes, ancient volcanic mountains that characterize this Cascadia region. Now, I had mentioned earlier that Canada has some desert. The desert system is called the Sonoran Desert, and so just on the other side of Mount Adams, on the eastern side, that same desert system extends through Washington State as well. And there's quite a dramatic contrast between the lush forested area and the fruit-growing regions going into this high desert, which is very very different kind of terrain. As one journeys along the Columbia River, traveling east from Portland, if they go past the community of Hood River and past Mount Hood, they will quickly encounter this transition in the environment. And so, in other words, those hot, windy, dry desert conditions characterize as well, particularly during the summer, some of the climate conditions that are felt at the ranch. The summer conditions can be very, very hot. Even guests from places like New Mexico have managed to pick up sunburns quite easily there due to the high heat, high intensity of the sunlight and tremendous warmth that's felt there. So again, not unlike British Columbia's Okanagan region, there's marvelous orchard, fruit-growing activity in and around the community near ECETI, and of course ECETI has its own agricultural program. Lots of great crops being grown by the staff there every year. Delicious, well-crafted food that they come from those gardens that I've enjoyed over many seasons. They are a community of individuals seeking to pursue their ideals that are oriented towards spiritual visions that are guided primarily by James's documented experiences that relate to out-of-body and near-death as a young man. That led him on his journey, and I know James has a great deal to say about that, and I'm sure your listeners will enjoy hearing from him on his quest and journey through life. That eventually guided him to that location, and that guidance was accompanied by different forms of contact with extraterrestrial type entities and UFOs, Pleiadians. I mean, James has really run a gamut of really very dramatic contacts, but I think one of the most endearing characteristics about what happens at the ranch is simply that James, as the private landowner, has made the opportunity available for so many to come to visit and be participants and share at those levels of experience that may, to enable others and to help to push through the social walls of denial in our present culture about the nature of what these things are. Letting authorities define for us what our potential is in these experiences, and go to a place like the ranch and have the experiences for ourselves. It's very endearing to think about how he's helped thousands of people to participate in their own contacts and make their own breakthroughs. So again, we have this lush wilderness setting, Pacific Northwest setting, just a dozen or so miles from Mount Adams. Mount Adams dominates the visual landscape. It's like a Mount Fuji in Japan. I mean, it's this great big stratovolcano. It's a massive formation covered in glaciers that are consistent throughout the year, and the melt water that runs off of them feeds all the local waterways. So there are beautiful fresh glacial waterways in the area. That those waters are accessible. People are drinking artesian or glacier well water. All these kinds of very invigorating tonic-like conditions exist there. I've gone there for lots of R&R as well as adventure in the surrounding forests as well. So this ranch is in this marvelous setting, and it's an enchanting setting. I was saying that in the late 90s when I began visiting there, I would run into phenomena accompanied by other people. We would see things happen that were like magical forest type of characteristics. People go to Disneyland for enchanted forests and go to these kinds of manufactured playgrounds. But here, at the edge of wilderness, and the Gifford Pinchot Forest is a national wilderness area. It's federally declared wilderness. It's the edge of civilization is occurring right there. That setting facilitates a lot of extraordinary encounters with extraordinary phenomena. My tapings from that location include lights coming out of the forest into the field where all the witnesses are hanging out at dusk, like luminous entities coming out of the forest and manifesting at 20 feet above the ground, like in the trees and stuff like that. It's just really mind-blowing, to say the least. And without the documentation, those fleeting moments, they happen in our lives, and then they're gone, and we move on to the next thing. There is so much. I have such a feeling of enrichment, in other words, from having been able to catalog things like that happening, so I can revisit the footage again and again. And because I have a reasonably high quality camera, the image quality is substantial in those incidents. So luminous phenomena in the trees that are not only visible to the naked eye but can be recorded on instruments, and then objects that fly in to the field and fly below treetop level that are recorded on cameras. James has substantial footage that looks like that. I have some footage of that, but James has some of the most substantial footage. There's one object called the ultra-dimensional, that James shared the footage with me, and I have it on my channel. He's published it in different venues as well. Very strange object caught in night vision that tumbles as it flies through from above the trees from the area from the north. From the east, and then flies below treetop level through the field, which is a very wide expanse of cleared land that's been used in the past for echinacea and other agricultural use. It flies in a very determined way in one direction only, under conditions that are not high wind conditions. The object is differentiated from. It doesn't look like a bug with wings. There's no flapping of wings. It's not a bird. It's not a bat. We have all those baseline recordings of. We have bats on night vision. We have birds on night vision. We have all these recordings. It's not one of them. This is just a really weird character that's a luminous entity. And I think, again, it's the determined nature and the consistency of its flight path and velocity that differentiate it from other types of potential natural phenomena. It's really bizarre and profound. And if I hadn't been, I wasn't there the night that happened. One of my colleagues was there and saw it. They could see it with the naked eye while it happened. James got it on tape. But if I hadn't seen, well, I guess I should reframe that. If the fact that I've been on site and seen so many of these related things for myself grounds me in experience that allows me to appreciate that this is part of the repertoire of the environment, that it can deliver experiences like that. In other words, Dave, I'm saying, if you and your friends want to see luminous entities coming out of the forest and flying around in an open space where everyone can observe them, ECETI Ranch is one of the places you might want to visit sometime, so you can see that for yourself, because it's happening there.
We are talking with John Kelly here on Space Out Radio. John is a videographer, and we're talking about the ECETI Ranch in Washington State. To continue that topic, I have talked to people who are familiar with that besides yourself, John, and some of the stories that I have heard with all the different phenomenon there, whether it's UFOs, landings, whether it's fairies, of all things, flying through the trees, whether it's Sasquatch or any other kind of mythical being that enters that area. Are you surprised with all of that action that is happening there that the United States government maybe hasn't taken that over, as they have other areas that have a lot of paranormal, supernatural type activity?
Well, again, the federal government has laid claim to the Gifford-Pinchot wilderness area, which is a vast piece of land that goes from Mount Adams to Mount St. Helens and north. So, in fact, they have an investment in property, and they've laid claim to property. I mean, if something's flying out of the woods and coming to the ranch, or flying over the ranch, it's most likely also spending time in those areas as well. So, to answer your question, the government has long-standing claim in the area. They just haven't taken over all the private property, but they have much more land than James does.
Yeah, because I'm kind of curious about that, because you always hear of these stories that when there is a lot of phenomenon, you hear the government all of a sudden reclaiming that type of land, maybe for their own studies. And with all of the action there, I'm kind of surprised that they haven't maybe tried to bully their way in there a little bit more.
Well, I think James will be able to tell you about that. Because he's been living on the land for decades. He has a lot to say in his personal history about encounters with government personnel of various sorts, and the high adventure that went along with that. I will leave that to James to tell you more, because he experienced it. But he has shared the black helicopter footage with me. I've been on site when a Chinook was operating maybe 100 or 200 feet above the ground at 1 a.m, hovering directly over dozens of people in tents, which is not only a very loud operation, but a beyond the pale dangerous operation as well, considering that if that piece of equipment failed due to mechanical or pilot error under those conditions, it would fall on the tents and kill all the individuals inside. So there was no insurer that would ever back a film production, for example, that would engage in such dangerous practices. That is so ridiculous. It can only be construed as an act of intimidation. I mean, you've been around a Chinook helicopter, the double rotor transport helicopters. Those are loud, mean pieces of equipment. I have that on tape. I have the Chinook. I'm sorry. So you've had occasion to. So I have that incident on tape. I mean, the Chinook is loud. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. It's hovering right over the tents. It's just one of many helicopter incidents that happens and that are ongoing. There are National Guard training exercises, like Air National Guard activities that every year we'll see squadrons of various helicopters. We saw them in 2000. We saw them this past year and the year before. But specifically, there are black helicopters that will make incursions over the property and will even come down like very low, like as if they were proceeding to land on the ground, as if they were asserting some form of declaration of dominance of the area. And given the legacy of the testimony emerging from the ranch and all the documentation that says that there's extraterrestrials interacting with the people there, then we could construe that was like some kind of response to their awareness, and it would lay down a conceptual framework in which we could anticipate that there is a low intensity war taking place in North America, if not elsewhere. That there is low-intensity warfare occurring, in which traces of which may become visible from time to time. I'm not necessarily talking about a shooting war, but I'm talking about a show of various displays of force. So this aura of low-intensity warfare accompanies these encounters, and we see, in general, in the UFO field, the way that becomes visible, more so than necessarily, being checked out by men in black or being badged by some agency personnel, is information warfare, in which there are ongoing acts of censorship occurring in attempts to constrain media, in which people are disclosing and sharing information and attempting to raise consciousness or offer educational resources around these topics, particularly individuals who may not be assets to intelligence agencies or who may be non-official personnel. There are ongoing pressures on those parties dealing with issues of officials, surveillance or intimidation and harassment, interfering with their legal, safe, and harmless activities. So information warfare is possibly the most visible element of what I'm describing as an ongoing low-intensity war condition that exists ostensibly between humans and extraterrestrials, in which military or paramilitary units appear to be engaged, and we are able to cite their presence because we see their equipment operating in these areas, and particularly we see them in very unsafe operations that are quite possibly illegal.
Do you find, John, that these activities by the men in black or these black helicopters that we hear so much about, like the Chinook that you have on tape, happen when there is a lot of activity at the ECETI Ranch?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and James has footage. I haven't been there when this happened. James has footage of jet fighters in pursuit of UFOs, so that exists. That there's direct relationship between the appearance of the military equipment and the appearance of the UFO, all in the same visual frame. I can only speculate about the significance of these events. Although I will say, I think the year of the Chinook, there were some really intense phenomena there. There were these. This is 2011, I believe, is the year of the Chinook, and there were these objects. There was more than one incident where these objects were flying over the ranch, and the light that was coming from them was making a halo in the atmosphere around them. I mean, this was like being on the set of a movie. It was just ridiculous, the amount of light that was coming off of these things. There was a visual halo, like, the sun has perihelion and sundogs that can accompany it under the right conditions. So these UFOs were surrounded like there's a ring around the moon under different conditions. There was this ring accompanying the UFO in its flight. It was just absolutely stunning. I have one of those on tape from my 2011 catalog. It's the brightest object I have on night vision. But that was also the year, I believe that was the year of the Chinook. And so, in other words, in the waves of phenomena, the wave-like manifestations of phenomena, when a person spends a long time at a place like the ranch, the phenomena come and go like the tide goes in and out. It's not every night that is high intensity, but the waves of incursions of phenomena and the military presence, they seem to accompany each other in like a dance-like oscillation or flow. So while I can't say to you, with numeric certainty that if something happens at 12 noon, it means that something's going to happen at midnight in terms of military presence, I can say to you that what we can evaluate and what does happen is that participants in the experiences will have precognitive dreams the night before about contacts, and the contacts will manifest in the following day. That does happen. That's a known phenomenon.
We are talking with John Kelly, UFO videographer. And John, you have a YouTube page that has over 1.4 million views on it. Obviously, people are very excited and enamored with the UFO phenomena. When you get up close and personal with UFO contact like you have had at the ECETI Ranch, what does that do for you spiritually and the people around you who are seeing it at that time?
Well, this is important. I think the most important question about what we take away personally and how it influences our growth and development. We can say physiologically that our nervous systems are being conditioned by a high-intensity stimulus that we're not receiving through other means. We are being conditioned, particularly as videographers. You'll see that a lot of people, first time out the gate with their cameras, will have incredibly shaky footage. But that with years of cultivation, their stamina and their stability improves dramatically, so that the shots are exceptionally stable. That means that their nervous systems have adapted. This adaptiveness and evolutionary influence is being felt by the parties who are there, not only in terms of camera operations, but on all other sorts of different levels as well. I had mentioned before that that contact, with the flying disc has archetypal significance. I'm certainly not the first person to talk about this. Carl Jung had something to say about this as well. I cite the Sudarshan Chakra, Vishnu, the iconic imagery of Nataraj doing the Tandava dance in the ring is prolific throughout South Asian art. That's the being in the disc in my conception. And I say that we are, through engaging in these modern day phenomena, we are reinvigorating or evoking an ancient archetype relative to cosmic fulfillment of cosmic potential within our human lifetimes that we have within us. There are universes within us from the spiritual perspective. We have dimensional potential, that we're not simply physical entities who eat, sleep, procreate. That is not what human beings are. Human beings are transcended entities. So I see that heightening of behavioral performance is characteristic of ongoing contact, that the contactees display extrasensory potential, telepathy, clairvoyance, precognitiveness, other kinds of sensitivities are a manifest and accompany testimony of contacts, out-of-body travel, other types of testimony, all these sort of relative types of spiritual phenomena. I have not surveyed a large population and followed up year after year with witnesses to determine on any large scale, the growth and development that may be relative to their contacts. Although I've worked closely with some individuals, I do not have large-scale studies that I can cite. Although I think that those studies would be more than worthwhile for people to undertake. Institutions like universities and colleges could staff and fund programs that tracked populations over multi-decade periods, just like we see in other types of research related to health, diet, and other types of practices. That we could track populations along these lines as well in order to identify psychological health and well-being, spiritual insight, and other kinds of characteristics that are cultivated through these types of stimulus. So again, we don't know. When 200 people congregate at a place like the ranch, and then have a really dramatic incident happen that the first night, we can't pretend to understand all of the issues that those people may be addressing in their lives, all the challenges that they may be working through in their day-to-day experience, but. Mostly, these are vacationers at that location. It's a retreat vacation type of spot. They're looking for something beyond the ordinary, and it certainly delivers. I've stayed in touch with a small circle of the visitors. I've maintained friendships and collegial relationships with people over the years, and there's been a lot of sharing, personal insight and growth and development. Certainly, I think that the people who are attracted to a place like that are growth and development-oriented individuals. They're seeking growth, they're seeking spiritual adventure, and that has been part of their experience, as I understand it. But in terms of larger-scale studies, that remains again for our institutions to get involved in meaningful ways to take note of these social and cultural phenomena that are occurring within our population, in an attempt to understand frontiers of evolutionary growth, and furthermore to extend back through human history to appreciate the possible interventions in various forms that these entities may have enacted upon the human population in terms of steering growth and development of societies and civilizations, if not our actual physical identities. I'm not a pretend geneticist, but there's lots of literature about not well understood components to DNA, genetic material that maybe that no one knows where it's from, as well as there's lots of folkloric legacy in different cultures about interventions of beings from the sky with human populations. I mean, certainly I think that's in the Old Testament. So there's a lot of room to explore these questions, and we have a modern population now. We have a substantial modern population, contemporary population, not just a historic legacy from literary sources or other sources, but we have living people now who represent enough of a population for these types of meaningful inquiries to take place, and that the academic community is in a position to undertake them. But as to their inclinations, due to a variety of pressures, such as living in a military-industrial oriented economy, whereby all research, or its majority, has to be weapons-oriented. We have to. Majority of our sciences are employed in weapons manufacturing, and research and development. The human potential movement has not taken first place. So I think earlier in my talk I had mentioned this idea about our value tree, our priority template, and shifting and reevaluating, what our priorities are, and on the social scale, I appear as an advocate for human potential in this venue. I'm here talking about what I perceive as the magnificent opportunity for growth and development that can come through engaging, in meaningful contact through willful processes. But our society has to take up the helm for that as well. It can't all just be about engineering for profit, genetic engineering to patent organisms. I mean, there's this large population having incredible experiences beyond that really are outside of the realms of the existing textbooks, and it's up to our institutions to take up the call and apply their resources, staffing, funding, and their brain pools, to bring better answers to these questions. There's, when I'm standing there and I'm making contact with what appears to me to be some kind of cosmic phenomena, and I'm just an interested party. I'm just sort of a nominee from the population doing that. It occurs to me that all these issues related to enculturating a form of harmony with the universe, with the environment, with society, with our neighbors, all of these factors come into play. When I see such high performance phenomena occurring, I sense the need for greater facility in my own life, and to live in a way that helps me to better navigate the universe, and so that I may enjoy and participate in a better quality of life. And so, at a social level, I say that this idea expands into society, expands into our institutions, that we need to incubate and cultivate that type of vision within the institutions for a better way for all of us, and that this encounters with the UFO and the ET may serve as a guiding point to help us to understand the necessity for that.
How do you feel, and how has this changed you the more you have delved into the UFO phenomenon over the years?
I've satisfied a lot of my personal curiosity because I've been able to get out of the books, movies, and television, out of the media, into the living experience. I have been educated in an experiential way into these phenomena. I'm a living participant in these phenomena, not just a distant, passive observer. So it's been very fulfilling and rewarding. I mean, this is one of the ultimate high adventure opportunities of our times, as I mentioned before, and I've been actively participating. But not only have I been a participant, but I've been successful in producing some meaningful documentation, and I've been in a position where I could share that with large numbers of people from around the world. And so my journey, in other words, has been fulfilling personally and individually, but also my personal journey has meanings, has social significance, because as you've mentioned, my channel has become one of the visible portals through which the public accesses resources related to these phenomena, with an emphasis on experiential phenomena, not opinion, theory, hyperbole, but hard documentation with multiple instruments over a number of years from different locations. So there's a great sense of fulfillment and reward that has accompanied that. This has not been an easy journey by any means. There are many challenges and difficulty. It's one of the fundamental understandings of people participating, particularly in a public way in this field, is that we are engaging this in a hostile environment. There is a hostile culture around us that is well funded and heavily staffed, that would rather envision the potential of these encounters in their most destructive potential, rather than their most beneficial. And so there's information warfare and cultural struggle that accompanies, particularly with engagement to the public. My very, very, very widely read column, the Vancouver UFO Examiner, was only recently censored and terminated from the Examiner.com website, for example. There were over 200 articles that had been available through that portal and had been distributed widely. Many many very insightful and original investigative reports related to UFO phenomena that have been syndicated onto sites like the Wall Street Journal and USA Today over a number of years. All of that was pulled down in an act of censorship. And so, as I said, there was a hostile climate into which I am publishing, but there is great fulfillment in accepting the struggle. One of my words for today, I was working with clients today in private sessions, and one of the terms that emerged from that work today was related to the idea of riding the tiger. The tiger is this fearsome beast with all kinds of strength and potential that could be the encounter and engagement with could be catastrophic for us. But instead of shying away from that high energy experience, we are called to grip on and to ride and let it take us where it will on these ups and downs, these oscillations of life, the good and the bad, on an adventure. The epic experience of Ulysses and the Odyssey was filled with good and bad. Ulysses started with a crew, and by the time he got to the end of the journey, he was the only one who survived. And only by divine intervention on many incidences was he the only survivor. I mean, talk about high adventure. And this is our Western legacy from classical Greek civilization, that individuals are called upon to embrace the storms of life and to ride the waves of a sometimes violent ocean, and to get to seek the horizons beyond the present situation. And certainly there are epic proportions to attempting to engage with the UFO issue in society at a publishing level, at a journalist level. I've encountered some of those. One of the good things I can report is that, as a consequence of that column coming to its end, a new publishing venue has opened up called newsinsideout.com, and we are launching on December the 8th this year, and I will be that will become a primary publishing portal for my UFO reporting moving forward. So we are encountering difficulties. Alfred Lambermont Weber and myself are the founding journalists of newsinsideout.com, and this will be my new publishing platform for my UFO-related and other news content. So, through the symbolic difficulty of those events that I've just described, new growth is taking place, which has all kinds of yet undetermined potential. New growth comes from the dissolution of the old, and sometimes from a crisis, some things break down, new things emerge. This is part of the adventure. People who can embrace and accept that, who can ride the tiger on an adventure through life, can journey far. My life is characterized by exceptionally far journeying into a variety of very esoteric arenas. So my life offers an example of that possibility, that potential. The UFO arena is one of my areas of interest. As I said, it from my perspective, it ties into the greater spiritual potential of human beings and the spiritual nature of the universe. Again, I've emphasized that my work has social significance because of the widespread syndication of my content through venues like YouTube or through the mainstream newspapers. My voice has been heard in a very politicized would minimize the intensity of which people feel about the different personalities that have become highly visible in exploring this topic, of which there are many, and over generations people have been exploring UFOs for a long time. But my voice has been heard in that highly esteemed circle of individuals. So that is something. There's something of value happening there, and I have a lot of respect and honor for the opportunity to play that role. And my hope is to continue, and that greater things will come through that persistence. That better reports will emerge, better video will emerge, better encounters, better adventures, better opportunities for more people will emerge as a result. That's the vision that I hold. I've certainly I've made mistakes in judgment along the way. I've sometimes misidentified things. Course correction has occurred from time to time, but along the way, I've also accumulated a very meaningful portfolio, and that is something of lasting value, particularly of educational value for future students and researchers, and it's widely available to the public now. While we have an internet, or at least while we have a publicly accessible internet, who knows, what we'll be doing or using in the next 20 years from now to communicate with each other. I hope that in whatever form becomes available, I'll just be able to continue as a participant, and that I will be able to make meaningful contributions and to synthesize ideas to draw from my experiential knowledge in multiple fields and demonstrated skills and abilities that I can apply and offer a sense of direction, offer a synthesis and an integration to bring people not only closer to these experiences but closer to each other, and to emphasize harmony in our society and sharing and not just hypothetically, but inter-civilization, inter-species harmony as well. That we are living in a larger universe, and that our day-to-day choices, our individual choices, have lasting and far-reaching significance, and that we can walk in steps. We can walk in good steps that lead us and those with us in a better direction. So that's the hope for my work. As we mentioned, my website, yourinnervoice.com, was really started for my clinical practice. I work as an alternative therapist, and I produce speech studies. But because of my various interests, and because of various opportunities that emerged for me over time, and colleagues who came forward, like James Gilliland, my access to the UFO arena was also given a boost, and my repertoire as a former producer for CBS and other media qualifications gave prominence to my thoughts and ideas that were expressed in writing, video, and radio. Pay attention to what I have to say. Certainly not everyone agrees with my opinions on these subjects, but I've been given substantial airtime and consideration in editorial newsrooms for my opinions on these topics, and I hope that I can continue to form good relationships with thoughtful people in these industries to help to cultivate better ideas and better positions and understandings about the questions that face our society. The encounter with the UFO and the imminence of emergence into a larger and greater civilization setting where we are sharing openly with other civilizations is one of the emergent questions that the futurists, the exopoliticians, philosophers are examining. And it's seemingly inevitable, given the substantial nature of contact that venues like YouTube offer. There are so many personal videos of profound nature coming from individuals that are not computer-enhanced CGI fakes, but just down-to-earth videos of really extraordinary events. The frequency and continuity of these things is telling us that we're moving in a direction where more of this is going to happen. I mean, even the CIA and their Robertson panel from the 1950s anticipated a time in the future where widespread contact was occurring. They didn't put their provisions in place to anticipate a diminishment, that this was a waning trend, that we were on the tail end of something that had been happening in the past but wasn't going to happen in the future. This sort of obsession with UFO history versus the present day. That wasn't what the CIA wrote about in the Durant report. They anticipated a future in which there was widespread contact.
Thank you.